All right, we're live. Hey, everybody. For those of you tuning in, this is episode 28 of celebrating the brand ambassador. And I'm really excited today to be here with Tommy Mauriello and Zack Berger, both from Edrington. Both formerly worked with Macallan in the portfolio, but now both are working with Glenrothes and Wyoming whiskeys, hence the branding there. Very exciting. But have different roles. Tommy, so I'm going to have you guys introduce. So Tommy, why don't you tell me, my first question I always ask everybody is, what is your position and what are the responsibilities that fall under that position?
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for having us on, Elaine. Very excited to be chatting with you this afternoon. And my current role with Edrington is the area manager for New York and Connecticut, focusing on the Glenrothes and Wyoming whiskey.
So what do you do in that role?
Basically, it's called a proximity style approach to market.
Okay.
We were taking our resources and taking, honestly, our budget and our manpower and focusing on select brands within our portfolio and different brands for different cities. So New York is going to be a key city for obviously Glenrothes and Wyoming. Mm-hmm. Macallan will always be the focus brand inside this company because that's what keeps the lights on. But right now, there is a current Macallan team in New York and Connecticut, as well as a Glenrothes and Wyoming team. So my role is overseeing the accounts that we are approaching for the on and the off premise, as well as what we're doing in those accounts, how we're activating the people that we're touching, also overseeing the overall sales. So what our numbers are doing, if we're staying on track. Obviously, only way that we all get to preach these beautiful brands is when they sell. So we have to make sure that the orders are going into the computer and someone's actually buying this stuff to ensure that we get to keep on going out and having fun dinners and fun education parties.
That stuff. Yeah, that selling stuff, man.
Yeah.
It has to happen in order for us to have all the other fun. So that's kind of cool. And I look forward to diving into it later on about really what you're responsible, like some of the things you do as a market manager, because it's a role, and also as a sales manager, like some of the questions, because it is sometimes the next step for many people within a company as a brand manager. So it's really exciting to hear about that. So, all right, Zack, tell me, what is your role and what are your responsibilities?
Yeah, well, first of all, of course, thanks for having us on here. This is an absolute hoot, and happy to be here to talk about all of this great questions and all the great things we're going to talk about today. And so I am the Glenrothes and Wyoming whiskey brand specialist. Essentially, that's kind of the same function as a brand ambassador in that it's all about education. It's all about advocacy. It's about being the face of a brand and kind of showcasing the lifestyle of that brand. So I work hand in hand with Tommy and one other colleague on our team to, support the sales team, support the distributor, support our commercial teams, but also be there as that person for the education. If somebody really wants to delve into the whiskey, if somebody wants to learn more about the background and the story and the history of the brands, ideally they would come, they come to me and we get to have that great conversation. And I think it works really well, especially with Tommy overseeing the team and really focusing on the sales components. And then that allows for me to, yes, assist in the sales components, but also really, really focus on that education and that advocacy, because, I think in order for people to be excited about the brand, they have to know about it and they have to learn about it. And that's my job.
That's awesome. And how is it like working for Tommy? No, you don't have to.
It's fine. It's cool. No, it's great. So I remember when Tommy joined our team a couple of years ago, and I was very, very, very excited. And we've had a lot of great success over the past couple of years. And now that we're working much, much closer on a team, it's been an absolute treat. Absolutely.
I mean, Zack's all right?
He's not that bad. No, it was cool having to get Macallan Zack come on over and be the Glenrothes gentleman. So it's funny to have that face come on through. It's funny, man. It's having a single malt Scotch. Everything is done the same, right? There's nothing that much different to make a single malt, but a name like Macallan is far different, like a name like the Glenrothes. So to have him come on over with the Macallan dust sprinkled on him was a nice little treat.
Nice little treat. But we're going to talk about it. Zach and I talked about what are the challenges of having the Macallan dust on you when you're working with a different brand. All right, so Zach, I love your story. You had a great story of how you were discovered behind the bar and offered the brand ambassador job. So you can tell us like what happened, what was the story behind that, and like why you jumped at the chance. Like what was going on in your life that you kind of jumped at that chance.
Yeah. So I've had a really kind of interesting career behind the stick, just working in all sorts of different levels of restaurants and bars. And something that, by virtue of the community that I was in, and I wasn't really super in touch with the larger bartending and hospitality community, I hadn't learned anything about how to appropriately take care of yourself when you're behind the stick. So just for example, like the ergonomics of shaking a cocktail and the best way to grab your ice, the best way to carry things and support your glassware and everything in between. And so I was working at this really fabulous bar down in the West Village, and my doctor at a doctor's appointment was like, listen, your hands are screwed up, your back is screwed up, your knees are screwed up because you haven't taken care of yourself. You have to learn how to take care of yourself, but you're kind of running out of time to be able to do this because your hands are going to really start to hurt more than they already do now, and eventually you're going to cause some serious permanent damage. So you've got some time, but you should really start thinking about another career. And so I went to the bar and to the team, and I said, look, like, this is kind of like my 6-month notice. I promise you, when I leave, it won't be going to another bar, but this is what happened with the doctor, and it's just time for me to move on. And maybe a couple of weeks later, I'm behind the bar. We're having a really great time. And this gentleman comes down, sits in front of my station. I'm in the service well, and it's a Thursday or Friday night, and we're rocking and we're really moving. And he sits down and with his wife, and they have Scottish accents. And I was like, this is awesome. And he goes, well, what whiskey are you most excited about that's on the back bar? And I said, well, it's Highland Park Dark Origins. Here's the deal behind Highland Park, and here's the deal behind Edrington. And let me tell you about the charitable trust, because when I was running the program, I was really interested in working with companies that had a similar style of ethos where they took really great responsibility for their programs, but also had responsibility to the community beyond spirits. And so I'm sitting there talking to this guy about Edrington and how much I love this company. And he goes, yeah, that sounds great. I'll take a Highland Park 12 Old Fashioned, and my wife will have a Cutty Sark and soda. And I was like, well, you're still part of the same portfolio, but cool, I dig it, whatever. So we're sitting there, we're having a great time, we're chatting. They're two absolutely wonderful people. And I don't know, maybe 2 hours later, he goes, listen, I'll split a Dark Origins with you. And I'm like losing my mind because this is my favorite whiskey we have behind the bar right now. So I stop the service well, I stop everything, we pour the drinks, and we toast and cheers. And he says, you know what, Zach, I have the best job in the world. And I said, okay, you're going to have to explain this to me. He says, well, I'm the CEO of Edrington, and then hands me his business card. His name's Paul Ross. And he hands me his business card, and I'm kind of sitting there going, shit, I've been totally just talking to this guy about his own company and trying to sell him his own whiskey for the past 2 hours. You were
interviewing for the job without even realizing
without even realizing it. And he said some really, really nice, really wonderful things, is that, this is what we look for in bartenders. Do you have any interest in coming over to this side? And I said, I'm always up for options, but until that point, I hadn't really considered ever being a brand ambassador. I was kind of emotionally preparing myself to just leave the industry altogether. And within a couple more days, maybe a week and a half, I met Jordan Zimmerman, who was working on the local team in New York. And several months later, I was working for Edrington. And my very first day, I show up to the office and I get in the elevator, and who's there but this gentleman, Paul Ross. And
that's amazing.
It was just an incredible thing. And I miss bartending very much. I miss being behind the stick and working with a team in that realm and being in the trenches together. But the transition to Edrington came at exactly the right time, exactly the right place, and I couldn't be more happy with the career I've had with the company. It's going to be 4 years next month, and it's been an absolute treat. So no looking back, only moving forward.
It's such a great story, and it also is a great example of how you're always on, right? You need to always be on because you never know who's sitting at your bar.
Right.
You never know the person, so if you are that person who's behind the bar and you're getting trashed, or you haven't taken that extra effort to learn about the brands behind your bar, or to be able to have that conversation with your customer, if that same guy, if he was, sorry, what was his name again?
So his name is Paul Ross.
Paul Ross was sitting at your bar, and you didn't, explain to him the brand or sell your portfolio or be able to have that conversation, he probably wouldn't have thought anything about you and just been like, oh, he was nice, whatever it is. And it's just a point. I bring it up because, I really do believe in building your personal brand is really, really important in every stage of your career.
Yeah.
And especially when you're a brand ambassador, you're always on, right? People are always watching you and what you're doing. So whether you're at your, doing your own presentation or out in a bar, you have to be aware of that. So, but as a bartender, if you want a brand to take you seriously, then you got to realize that people are judging you. Like I literally have had people come to me and say, "Hey, Lane, would you recommend me for this job?" They were bartenders, and I'm like, I really wouldn't be comfortable doing that. I said, because I've seen you behind your bar and you're always getting drunk, or you're giving away the house, like you're pretty much stealing from the bar you're working at. So how can I feel comfortable, recommending you to somebody else, or you have an attitude as a party person and this is a really corporate environment. So you really have to be aware of that. If it's not your career goal, then I guess you can do whatever you want, but you should be something. Oh, Richard's here.
Hey, what's up, Rich?
Hey, Rich, and Lillian Walter is watching. Hi, everybody.
But I agree with that, though, too. It's the only thing that you can never get back is a first impression.
Yes.
So speaking of always being on, it is so very important. And you are selling yourself before you're selling anything else. The confidence that you have in yourself is going to be the same confidence you have with whatever brand that you're representing. So you always do have to be on. You never know what eyes are watching. You never know who's in the room, what's being said about you. So I double down on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, those are great points. Really, really great points, because it's just something people don't realize sometimes. It's like, oh, this is something that's really serious, what we're doing and how you represent yourself in the industry. It's like, people are going to judge you later on. Like 10 years will go by and you still, if you were that party person, you might have to have a longer conversation. Like, well, I knew you as this. I try to give people a second chance because I believe every 8 years you kind of change as a person. And who you were 8 years ago is probably not the same person you are, today. So I have now learned to give people have that conversation. Like, who are you now? Like, I knew you back then. I'm assuming hopefully you've grown since then. If I did have that reputation, if they did have that reputation, and then, it only takes a short conversation or one drink out to know, nope, you are, or you
not much has changed.
Not much has changed, or whoa, okay, you have matured. All right. So Tommy, I want you to tell me, is you've had an extensive and varied career, and I've kind of summed it up here in this question, so you didn't have to. All right.
Thank you.
You started off in the industry in your college years, right? You were first as a bouncer, and then somebody put a gun to your head, and you're like, nope, fuck that. And then you went to Bobby Van's, right, which is a famous steakhouse, doing every job under the sun, from bar backing to bartending and everything else in between. And then you had a few years working for the government.
Close past that one.
Some of it good, some of it not so much. Then you started working as a bouncer for the Gerber Group, right, or security, right,
Yep.
which is the AKA, if people aren't aware of what the Gerber Group is, it's the whiskeys, right, the whiskey parks here in New York City, and they have many different names. And from there, which is an interesting one, I didn't ask you how you then became the whiskey buyer. From security to whiskey buyer is an interesting change, but. You went from there, you were there for a couple of years. Then you worked at Empire as a sales rep, where for 2 years you were selling a lot of the Bacardi portfolio, and you were kind of known as the Grey Goose guy. And then Bacardi,
for my accounts, yes.
Yeah, exactly, which is definitely a good one. And then Bacardi got taken out of there, so you're like, I'm not making any money. Then you worked at brand ambassador for Stoli, selling Bayou rum, which is a whole nother category, and working with Stoli is a whole nother. We could sit here all day just talking about that.
It's an experience.
It's a very interesting place. I want to get all the ex-CEOs together in one room one day. All right, so to sum it all up, because it's a really incredible, how many different things that you've done, because it speaks to the experience you now have and why what you're doing now makes so much sense. So then you came to work at Edrington. So first I want to talk about not the job you have now, but your first role. Was your first role as the marketing manager?
At Edrington, yes, I was hired as a market manager.
So I want to talk about what is similar about being a market manager to being a brand ambassador, and what is different, and what are the responsibilities there?
So it's when I was a brand ambassador, I went about being a brand ambassador in a much different way. had a much different route to becoming a BA than most people do. I didn't come from behind the bar. I didn't come from a monster program. I came from the distributor, and that doesn't really happen, So with that, I love being creative. I love learning about new things. I love, as our boss Chris says, I get excited about everything. So I enjoy learning about new things, and I enjoy talking to people about it and educating people. So what I brought was the sales background that I learned at Empire into Bayou, and then found my way to be creative and still sell as the market manager. So my approach to market is always going to be like a brand ambassador's approach to market.
Okay.
I want to do things the right way. I want to tell you all the beautiful and romantic things about these brands. I'm not as elegant and as flashy as Zach is with his presentations, but I pride myself in my brand knowledge. I want you to know that I know my stuff. I earn the right to talk to you about all things, from whether it be craft cocktails, whether it be mash bills, whether it be styles of stills. I enjoy all of that stuff. So my approach to being a market manager was being more heavily involved in the distributor. And another feeling that I had a leg up on the game being at Empire, I worked next to a lot of these guys. Mm-hmm. So I already had pre-existing relationships when I went onto the brand side. So I was able to call friends, which it's always nice having friends in the business, but I was able to call friends at the distributor. And for a brand ambassador, that's like, for some people, the forbidden door. It's like, how do I get in front of the distributor? I would like to talk to the reps more. It's, and it's difficult. And a lot of people hold those cards close to the chest. You don't want to bring certain people in because marketing people don't normally blend well with salespeople. Mm-hmm. And, it's a difference between a spreadsheet by category and then romance.
Right.
And I find the middle ground between the two. I find that middle ground between romance and that spreadsheet of hitting numbers.
No, which makes a lot of sense. And as the market manager, are you presenting the program? So the brand develops a program that they want to execute within the field. Say something like a support program for accounts, something like that. Is your job to then present it to the distributor as well as work numbers and stuff like that, like incentive?
Correct. So yeah, and that's more. So my role now as area manager, it's more that. It's more developing the programs and the execution of those. Gotcha. And our approach to market, what we're doing, the weapons that we're going to give these sales reps to go in, the weapons that Zach and Sebastian are going to have in market to go out there and get placements at our target accounts that we've been looking at. Fantastic. So, and that's where that's the part of the job that I really love, because that's where you get creative, and that's where it's like, okay, let's try this. Let's throw this to the wall and see what sticks. I think this is the way that the brand should be done, So it's a lot of learning, I'll say that much. But it's like going back to Gerber Group, right? We put together this amazing craft beer program. I'm like, it's Whiskey Park. People are going to love this. Who doesn't love a good craft beer? We got Bronx Brewery. The first time they put it in a can, we had it on, and it just sat there. And then when you go in and you look at certain things, I'm like, okay, our name's Whiskey Park. We have a lot of tequila on the background. And I always love saying you got to fish where there's fish. Mm-hmm. So people aren't drinking beers. People aren't drinking that much tequila back here, but old fashions and Manhattans are skyrocketing, and people are always asking what whiskeys we have. So I wanted to beef up our whiskey portfolio, and we got a lot of craft whiskey in there. And we started running a really cool program at a place called Whiskey Park. So,
which makes sense.
Yeah. Fish where there's fish.
Fish where there's fish. But it's also, okay, so for you, was it also, and I'm assuming now it's like, are you the person sitting in front of, like, when the distributor, it's like at the beginning of the year, and you're going to sit and go, okay, so this is what we're going to agree upon. This is how many cases that you guys have to sell this year. And
I'm in the room for that, but I'm not leading that conversation.
You're not leading the conversation. Who leads that conversation?
That is the director for sales so that's Chris Gilio, our boss in Metro New York, and he's overseeing that. And also David Bishop is our our Empire North guy. So he has a really solid crew, and with the distributor up in Connecticut as well as upstate New York. So I sit in with those and I understand them, and I pitch my ideas of what I feel is going to work in market, all the creative stuff on how we're going to reach that number that is put down. But I'm not leading those conversations.
Good. Okay, fair enough. I wasn't sure. I was like, I assumed there might have been somebody more, another senior person, but I never know. It's a smaller company, so you could, been that guy.
Absolutely.
I have a feeling you'll be that guy. You'll be that guy. So for a brand ambassador, because I never really worked a lot with my marketing manager the way it was set up at Diageo. So, but I hear it now more and more. It's like, as brand ambassadors, you should work with your marketing manager as much as you can, right? But
1,000%.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So they should be the person, like, you're the person who introduces them to the distributor and said, hey, this is my person, and then maybe helps direct them, like, which sales reps or sales team they should be working with. Because as we know, distributors are large and there's so many different sales teams within them. Is that correct?
1,000%. Okay. Yeah. And that's why, going back, why I always introduce myself as the Grey Goose guy. Even though I did not represent Bacardi, I was the part of the team that had Brown-Forman, William Grant, Edrington, and Bacardi. Right. And most of my venues sold a lot of Grey Goose. So rather than saying I was your fourth Empire rep, I said I was your Grey Goose guy.
You're the guy everybody wanted to talk to. All right, so now, like, you have a different job. So tell me now. I know you like this job a lot because there's a lot of creativity, and now you're in Connecticut and New York, and tell us a little bit about what that job is.
So it's an amazing opportunity to grow these brands, right? And you walk into a place with the name Macallan on your card, and it goes a long way. Now you walk into a place with Glenrothes on your card, you're another guy, and it's you really have to put the work in and understand and be super, super focused. Words that are being given to me by my powers that be is being disciplined and maintaining. So being disciplined, you can't say yes to everybody with this brand. Mm-hmm. Right? You have to stay super focused and super on target. When you build something out the way that we're doing, where we see this brand going, you have to stay on target. As soon as you start drifting off just a little bit, all the work that you did, all the pre-planned work is ruined. So it was looking at the market, understanding our accounts, understanding what is working and what's not working, and from the past as well. With this market, though, no one knows what's going to work because we all started in a brand new market.
That is so true. So you create the creative programming as well. So now you're working with the marketing team. Do you work with the brand teams?
Yes.
In the office?
Yes. So when we are still not back to our office we will be back in September. Okay. But everything over the beautiful Microsoft Teams, I get to work with our marketing side. And we have on our team is Katie Soares, who's a rock star, and with everything that's going around in our company, with so many people moving in positions, no one is taken to a fish like water like Katie. So Katie is giving us our message from brand down to commercial and how we activate. So having those conversations with her, understanding the exact vision and coming up with our activations and coming up with our approaches based on what she is getting from brand is huge.
So that's really, really important. And it makes a lot of sense that you guys are working directly together rather than two separate people. And Zach, are you in those conversations? Are you able to sit on those conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important for everybody to be in on those conversations because you want to make sure that everything's on the same page. Especially when you're really specific about your branding and the direction you want to carry and the direction you want to go, you have to make sure that everybody's on the same page. I'm more often there from for a creative side. This is how we could present it, and this is how I see that we could execute it. But I also love being in those conversations because of Tommy's way more focused and disciplined commercial background that allows for me with the big dreamy ideas to kind of rein it in a little bit and have something that's a little bit more executable. So yeah, I think everybody's in on those conversations, but because our team is small enough that I can come up with these ideas, I can talk about it with Tommy, and then Tommy takes it up the ladder, and I trust that those things are happening. So sometimes I'm there, yes, but sometimes you don't need to be, and you can trust your team. That's the beauty of having a team that's on the same page, is that if you trust your team, then you know that everybody's on the same page and you can move forward together without having to always be in the room.
Yeah, which is fantastic. And know that Tommy's not crushing your dreams all at once, because God knows, I know when we present big ideas, and as Brandon about, we do have grand ideas because we're on the street, but seeing the bigger picture, the team, working with the brand team, they do have the bigger vision and the big picture, and they're looking 5 years from now, and we're kind of looking, but this would be really cool. It'd be such an amazing thing to do right now. And they're like, yeah, no.
I can't tell you how many times that conversation's happened. This would be a really cool thing, but it's never going to happen.
And I get just as excited as Zach. I'm like, yes, we're doing that. And we're not doing that, actually.
Yeah. And people get frustrated, but actually one of the books, and I'll send it to both of you, and because I've been reading it, Alicia from Saint Germain recommended it, because understanding, the one thing I had to learn when I went to Anheuser-Busch, I moved from being out in the field to back on the marketing side, and I became a global manager. And everybody there had MBAs. I was the only one that did not. And
salute.
And it was like getting your MBA on the ground in real time, which was brutal, but very, very uplifting in the same way. It's the only reason I have my own company now. But you learn the word scalable, and you learn to think of things like creating a project plan and learning to test things out to see if they're going to work and do small tests and then move forward. Did that work? And then what didn't work, and get feedback from the markets. I was doing things on 3 continents, so you had to test it out with different countries and like their language. It was quite intense, but really it taught me a lot. And I think that is something I'm seeing, the change in the brand ambassador role as people are with the company longer. They are getting more involved with the brand teams and the marketing and learning I had this grand idea, but I now need to think of it within the budget that we have. And then how can I make it scalable? And then so that we can execute this in multiple markets. And it's not something it's a skill set you have to, I find that it would be useful. It's actually something I'm like creating. It's like teaching me about how to do strategy and making things scalable. And I will send you this book because it will help you then present ideas to the brand team that they will actually then take and run with. And it will never be as big as you want it to be. It always has to get a little bit smaller, but it starts there. You have to have the grand idea to get down to the small idea, right? You got to start big.
That's honestly been my biggest challenge in this role. It's because I'll always go big or go home,
Yeah.
And it's as a market manager, you would get your marching orders, right? And you go out and do your thing. And you could kind of tweak it to your personality. Like, this is kind of on brand, and just rock with it, Yeah. There's no doing that now. It's, when you're actually planning it out, it's like, good idea, not the right brand. This isn't what you're doing. And I've heard that, 40 times this week, let alone how many times I've heard it in the last 3 months. And it's so difficult to have that. And to like something that this team does so well, Zach, Angie previously, Roz previously, like our core team before the pandemic, we could execute anything. And that is a sense of pride that I had in what we do. Like, if you tell us to get it done, we're going to execute it. We're going to get it done. It was awesome. And even when we had these crazy ideas, like Zach wanted to do New Year's Eve in the Rainbow Room, it's like, let's see if we could do that. Next thing you know, I'm doing the Patrick Swayze lift with my wife in the Rainbow Room on New Year's Eve, and it was amazing. Yeah. But the hardest part is reeling those ideas in and staying on brand and staying disciplined. And I think coming from a brand ambassador background and wanting to do all the cool stuff, that's the biggest challenge for my role. It's like, can't do all the cool stuff.
But now that you're understanding it and learning about it more, one thing I found useful was sitting down with some of the brand teams and having them explain to me, like, okay, how did you come up with, like, what's our core messages and what is your vision, like how you want that message to be put out there in the world, and okay, so, and what are your goals for the year? Like, how does this need to tie into sales? So then I can at least in my own mind go, all right, everything I do and present has to tie into that one vision and that look and feel, and there has to be a sales element in some facet. And how am I going to do that? And it's not easy. It's definitely and you start big, and then you kind of bring it back down to like, all right, these are the core elements that have to happen, and it's not as cool as the Rainbow Room, but it's still kind of cool. It might just be the cocktails that we were going to serve. It went from the place to the cocktails.
Well, I mean, and I think that's the genius of a lot of these marketing teams and how I think every successful program we've ever done has been focused on kind of this idea and ethos, kind of this general concept, because you're right, it has to be scalable and it has to be something that can be transferred to different markets. I can't tell you how many times I'd be working into New York, but the brand team would need me to go to San Francisco and LA, and just in the 3 cities alone, how the interaction is a little bit different. And so maintaining the overall ethos of what you want to focus on and the message you want to get across is super, super crucial, but it also allows for the flexibility for the local commercial teams to be able to execute appropriately within their market. And what I've noticed over the past 4 years is that I love talking to the West Coast teams and I love talking to the Southern teams because we all have the same goal, the same idea, but how we execute a tasting in New York is different from Miami to Austin to LA to San Francisco and Chicago, for example. So I think the greatest route to success is the communication,
Yeah.
you know, and making sure that the marketing team has the idea, but they also have to listen to the local commercial teams who are actually activating and actually driving the program forward.
Because how many times has the marketing team covered an idea and you're like, yeah, I can't fucking execute that like,
That was
well, that was the fun thing about being in New York was that we were often able to, the marketing team would say, let's do this idea. And New York would be like, absolutely. But then the team from Minnesota would be like, absolutely not. There's no way that flies here. So yeah, being able to have the conversation, but that there's also credit due to the marketing team for taking that information and then downloading it and then internalizing that and then carrying that forward with the program that we're working on at this time and then programs for the future.
No, it says a lot about the marketing team if they're listening to you, which they should. They should be tapping into you quite often and like getting your opinion, like, hey, this is some ideas we're thinking, or do you have some ideas? The only thing I used to ask, I had this like demand with any of my clients now, because after working at Anheuser-Busch and I had to write so many PowerPoint presentations, it was mind numbing. And I even said to my boss when he hired me, and I was like, listen, I said, I'm super creative. I have lots of great ideas. I understand how to execute. I'm learning the scalability thing. I understand that's important to be able to do it. I said, but if you make me do a PowerPoint to explain it, you might as well just like shove me away in an office because it's going to be a week before you see me, or a week where I can actually be getting shit done. It was one of my biggest frustrations because it was constant. It was like, so now I tell my clients, because I actually work, Anheuser-Busch is one of my clients now, and I tell them, don't ask me to do a PowerPoint. I'm like, I will send this to you in a Word document and you could put it in a PowerPoint. I was like, trust me, you'll get more for bang for your buck if you only use my hours to write Word documents. I can do a PowerPoint all day and they look pretty, but yeah, it will slow me down. I think
I love
it. There he is. What's up, Rich?
All right. So you both went from being behind the bar to becoming brand ambassadors, right? So, which definitely has its challenges, right? So, I want to start with you, Zach. Like, what were two? We talked about a few things yesterday that you found challenging switching from one role to the other.
Yeah, I think. Oh man, so the things that always pop into my head first is learning how to take care of yourself. When I transitioned from being a bartender to working for Edrington, I all of a sudden had this really cool thing called benefits, which was this really strange thing that I didn't even use for the first year because I was still trying to get used to the fact that I wasn't working 80 hours a week anymore. There wasn't the sense of, oh my God, I got to pay rent next week. I need to go pick up a shift kind of mentality. And so being able to step away from that and learning that if you rest, if you actually take your PTO, if you actually utilize the benefits that the company gives you, then you are going to be a much more productive part of the team. If you're exhausted and you're burnt out, you are no good. You're no good to anybody. And that was something that it took a while for me to learn. I mentioned to you yesterday, I don't really remember I remember like the first week of working at Edrington and then getting thrown right into the fire. I joined the team at the end of August, so we're September all the way into O&D. And the next thing I really remember is March, and we finished the year, and I was really confused about what the hell had just happened because we were doing multiple events a day, and I'm working with this team that is so talented and so smart, and they're just driving everything forward. And Zach, here's all the things you're going to do. And so learning how to sleep, and you don't have to be out until 2:00 in the morning visiting accounts because you have to wake up in the morning and you have to do your admin work. And you have to find the balance within that. And that was something that in that transition was really, it took some time for me to really figure that out and really have an understanding of that type of work-life balance.
Yeah, it's a hard one. It must have been weird when you got to Christmas and you actually had time off.
Oh, it's so weird. Especially the first year was, I remember the team talking about it and I said, well, I'll do it because, I'm the new guy. Right. And I feel like I'm going to be here, so I might as well work. And the team was like, oh, that sounds great. Thank you very much. See you later. And I remember my mother just being absolutely like ripped, totally upset with the fact that I volunteered to stay in town for for Christmas because that's what I was used to. That's what my life had been for the past decade as a bartender is somebody's working Christmas Eve and I'm used to it and it might as well be me.
Right.
So yeah, that was definitely, but having that time, and then I finally got sat down by the wonderful and incredibly talented Miss Jordan Zimmerman, and she was like, "You're not doing anything wrong. You're not burnt out, but you have PTO and you should use it. You should take time for yourself. And we're seeing you every day, and you're doing a lot of great things, and that's wonderful. But also, take a nap, dude. Like go to the beach, go to the beach for a long weekend, and feel okay to take that time."
Yeah.
Which was a big transition for me.
I know it's one. You're not alone. I hear that often from a lot of ex bartenders who are now brand ambassadors. And the one advice I always give them is also this, and maybe Jordan gave you this, is it's something I had to learn. And one of my bosses told me this. He said, "Elaine, just take off the same time every year." So I started working my schedule. So I always took the same 3 weeks off a year, like always. So I'd always take it off spring break in April because that's when my daughter was off from school. I would take it off 1 week in August and then between Christmas and New Year's. And I could plan. So I could book my vacation a year before. Stage you're talking about, but also my bosses got used to it. Elaine's going to be out that week. There was no surprise. Like that's just don't book me in anything. I would have it on people's calendars way ahead. And that way I got to take all my vacation. And
Absolutely.
I left my computer at home and my phone at home. And I would have a little note saying, "Yep, I am not here. Don't bother me." And it's hard.
It is hard. You have to be able to leave it at home, and you have to, I think scheduling your PTO, especially if it becomes a routine, is fabulous because then you're forcing yourself to take time instead of waiting for yourself to need time and to the point where you're like, I can't do this anymore. I have to take a vacation. So having yourself set up like that is definitely recommended for sure.
Definitely recommended. And Tommy, how about you? What was your big girls?
So one that's genius, by the way, and I'm going to use that. I really like that play. And setting it up around shutdown, which we're coming up on, is actually a really intelligent play. So thank you for that idea.
You're very welcome.
I have a similar thing with Zach with the always be there and always going forward. I don't know how to take time off, and I get yelled at when we finally do decide to take time off because I'm still on my phone. Or reading back bars if we go out to dinner somewhere. I'm terrible.
Yeah. I can't. I cut that off.
Yeah, I can't. I started telling people I got to sit with my back to the bar. Please don't hand me a cocktail list. Please just I'll drink wine tonight. Whatever it may be. But paperwork for me, like we said, expenses, all this stuff. It's whatever. I'll get to it. I'm seeing all these accounts. I'm doing all this stuff. It means absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. You can see 5,000 accounts. It doesn't matter. Do your paperwork. Be extremely, extremely on top of that. And even more so in this role, I am becoming that guy that will look at a report and plan and stay disciplined with my paperwork. And I want to be out there. I want to be at the accounts. I want to taste the new cocktail at this place. I want to go to this opening. I want to go to this activation. But I have to get paperwork done. Like Zach's saying, I have to wake up. It's not just me waking up anymore and then going to my accounts. Like sometimes it's me waking up and then looking up and saying wait, it's 5:00. I haven't left this back room yet. I haven't left my desk, so it's that admin work was a nice swift kick in the ass for me. That's difficult. Zach has a different bartending background than I do. I got behind the bar at Whiskey Park just so I could tell people how the drink should be. So I was I went and I took the Sunday shift when nobody was there, but just to say I do it too, it's which I couldn't do it nearly as good as my staff did, but that's neither here nor there. I tried, but yeah, it was understanding that it's just and also another thing, the people that you're working with, it's the customer that comes in and complains about everything, that it has nothing to do with you.
Right.
The customers that complain to you about things and tell you your distributor sucks, this person owed me that, it has nothing to do with you. So taking that aspect out of it has always been a problem for me, but even more so now in caring so much about my accounts and the people that I call on. It's not taking that home and not taking things too personally was a really, really big adjustment.
Yeah, I can imagine it is, and you do it because it is. You do get wrapped up in your brand. Your brand becomes your baby. Your accounts, you really care about the people within them, and you want to defend them, like you want to help them. But you have to be cautious to keep keep that balance. But you're so right. Well, I will tell you a funny story about like paperwork because one thing we noticed, all the brand ambassadors, one of the brand ambassadors did an experiment. We used to have to do everything on Salesforce, right? And so it's every month, like filling out this stupid report and telling them like where you went, what you did, blah, blah, blah. So a couple of the brand ambassadors got together and they were like, I don't think anybody actually reads them. And I was like, why do you think that? He's like, I put things in there and it should have been a red flag and somebody should have called me on it, but nothing, right? So they just stopped doing it. They stopped for 7 months and nobody noticed. It was really fucked up. I was like, Diageo, by the way, you're paying this company a lot of money to be managing and nobody's reading any of the stuff that we're spending so much time putting together. So we all stopped.
If you're seeing this, I hate you.
Yeah, exactly.
I really, really hate you.
FYI. Yeah, that was funny. I mean, they got kind of like at the end, because at the end of the year, like would have to be like a recap, and I guess then people would start pulling reports, and then they were like, "Why is there no information in there?" But it took them a year to notice. Yeah, that was pretty bad. So, but we don't recommend that. I highly recommend constantly doing your reporting. I used to write notes all the time, just every day. At the end of the day, I'd like, "Oh, Dave, this is what I did today," and I'd put everything in my calendar, so then I would know where I was all the time. So I would look at my appointments, like what accounts, and at the end of the night, I would just like make an appointment and write all the accounts in there and be like, here you go. This is where I was, and to make sure. And now I do a thing where I've been working with a mentee to a brand ambassador, and it's like about Sunday planning. Cause I do this myself. Like I plan out my week. So I make appointments, like I schedule in my day, like I break a project up into multiple pieces and then I schedule it out through the week. So it's like, I only had an hour on this day, right? I'm going to spend 10 minutes on that one thing and that's it. It's helped me become so much more productive. Because as a brand ambassador, you're constantly running and you're not in your office and not. So knowing that you only have those 4 hours, you need to look at your entire week. It's like, when do I have those 3 or 4 hours? Okay, so what are the things? Because you always think to yourself, I'm just going to do it all on Wednesday. And then Wednesday comes and goes and you got buried in your fucking emails and you didn't do any of the things that you wanted to do. So I was like, okay, I now don't do my emails till 10 o'clock. I have a rule. I work from like 7 to 10 every day. I only work on the things that are really important, like projects that are really important to me. And I don't look at emails till 10 because you're answering somebody else's agenda. When somebody sends you an email, you're helping their agenda, not usually your own, or else it's a question you send to somebody else. Yeah. So it's like if you wait till it's like, you can wait to fulfill their agenda, even your boss, they're not expecting, or else it's like urgent. Then of course you have to, but if it's really urgent, they'll generally text you and say urgent.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's talk about this. So Tommy, right. So throughout your career, you went from being a brand ambassador to managing them and the company's relationship with the distributor. So what are some of your philosophies about how a brand ambassador should work with sales reps, and what can they do to build the relationships with them?
Understanding that you're not the only brand that the sales rep represents. And I think that is the biggest flaw for new sales rep. It's like, oh, well, they work for us. It's like, don't say that to anyone at the distributor ever. That is the worst thing for you to say.
Right.
And it's, you have to really do your homework before you go in and speak to the distributor team and the sales team. So I'm not going to go and talk to the Brooklyn rep that has a ton of hipster accounts that are slamming picklebacks and rolling rocks and try to get Zach to do a Glenrothes paired dinner tasting with their chef. That's just wasting everyone's time. It's understand what's going on, understand who else they have in their portfolio, learning when they're closing a month, learning that throughout the month of July, especially this week when they're going into shutdown, it's going to be very difficult to get to work with because they're making sure that all their accounts are set for 2 weeks, so understanding the way that the distributor works, understanding that when you're going into an account, that's their turf. Mm-hmm. Even though it's on your run, that's their account. It's not yours until they sign you off on that account, because they have 1,000 different people going to those accounts that are trying to sell them something, and they are the defense for their buyers. And the worst thing a sales rep wants is, who the hell is this Glenrothes kid that keeps on coming in here at 9 o'clock every Thursday when we're 5 deep at a bar, trying to show me a damn barrel stave, talking to me about where the sherry hit. I don't care. Get this kid away from me. Zach never does that. I never do that. I'm just using an example.
I know, but people still do. It's why
people still do that.
Mm-hmm.
They really do. It's crazy.
Understanding that when you get the phone number of a buyer, that buyer might not be the 22-year-old kid that's also out on a Thursday night at 11. And you just called him, that's working for a major corporation, while he's putting his kids to sleep.
Right.
And you're asking him about a placement for a dinner that you got next week because your executives are coming in. Your brand just got thrown out. You just destroyed it. It's like the little things like that. Before you go into an account, you should understand what's going on in the account. And a lot of the times your sales rep might not have that. It might be a new account. They might just have a relationship with the other distributor. You never know. So being upfront and honest and true to your word with your distributor partner is key. Don't lie.
Inform, because can you always inform? Like, I used to go to accounts and I would let them know I was at their account. Like, hey, just so you know, I was there. But if I could pick their brain beforehand, is there anything I should know? Right? That's the ideal, right? To be like, hey.
That's what I would always direct people to do.
Gotcha.
It's ask them what's going on at this account.
Right. What's the idea? Have you made any moves in here? Do you have any goals for this account? What have you already presented to them? Do you mind if I have that conversation? That they didn't take in Glenrothes. Why didn't they take it in? And do you mind if I try?
Yeah.
Right? Something of that nature?
Exactly. Or it's understanding that, I'm the new Glenrothes guy. And the reason you're the new Glenrothes guy is because the old Glenrothes guy messed up. And guess where he messed up? At this account. And you just walked in there saying, hey, I'm the new Glenrothes guy. Let me tell you about your brand. Now you just got ambushed and you didn't know what was happening. So
what could we do in the account? So what would piss a sales rep off? What are some things you could do that would really piss them off?
One, trying to pitch them on a programmed menu. If you go in and a sales rep has programmed out a menu, right? Mm-hmm. And it's set up with a certain distributor and a certain supplier, right? And say they have their rum. So a sales rep just did 2.5 months worth of work for this rum cocktail. And you come in and your product's $7 less, right? And you could do all this activation. It makes complete sense for them to swap that. You just killed the sales rep.
Yeah.
Without knowing it.
Great point.
It's like, why would you go and pitch my account on this? Why wouldn't you tell me? Who are you to flip menus, at my account? Do you know the work that I just put in for this menu? That's a big one. And that's one that I see quite often. Undercutting people. You can't talk poorly about brands or try to undercut menus. Understand, okay, when's this menu up? When's your next opportunity? Don't flip it just there, because you wouldn't want someone doing that to you, so you can't go out and bastardize other brands or flip other brands with it. But specifically when a rep is counting on a certain amount of cases coming in off that cocktail program because they have an incentive program on that brand you know nothing about. Right. And you just ruined their big hit that's lumped into all of their quotas for the next 2 months by flipping that cocktail, Wow. So
that's a big one. And does that come down to the brand ambassador not understanding the full portfolio? Understanding all the brands that the distributor carries, so they can be like, all right, this is actually part of our portfolio, so I have to be respectful of that.
100%. And also, when you're coming in and doing R&D for a cocktail menu, do not bring anything in that liquor bag that is not represented by your distributor. When you're whipping out Saint Germain, no. We use Lords here at Empire. Okay, it's
no, that's a great one.
Do not pull out anything for research and development. Do not send any cocktails their way that is with another house. Make sure that sales rep is getting paid off of your modifiers, off of the bitters, off of everything. Otherwise, that cocktail is not going on the menu.
No, that's a great point. That's definitely a mistake. And I definitely know I've done it accidentally. I definitely have, where I've made cocktails not knowing that. And then once I started understanding the entire portfolio, I was like, oh, okay, so these are our modifiers. These are the mixers you have in-house. These are the ones I can use. And then the distributors were very excited about putting all all my drinks on the menu.
I thought Mark Cash was going to break a bottle of allspice dram over my head once. He was like, "What? No, just no." Like the sweetest human being on planet Earth. And he was like, "Just what's wrong with you?" He literally asked you, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "Love you, Mark. I'm sorry." It's
No, those are all really great points. Well, I was like, it was very funny when I started working with Diageo as the brand ambassador and the mixologist. It was 2005, so cocktails really just started, right? So it's like cocktails are starting to become a thing, and and nobody at the company really understood cocktails very well yet, and because it was so new, and so I would started presenting cocktails, and Saint Germain obviously was like the new bartender ketchup, so I used Saint Germain as a way to sell other brands, because I realized that back then nobody knew who the fuck Don Julio was. They didn't know who Ciroc was. These were all kind of new brands. But if I put a cocktail with Saint Germain in it, and not for obviously a mixology account, but for a regular account, the consumer would buy it because of the Saint Germain, not because of the brand. So they might like tequila, but they really like Saint Germain. So it became like a sell. I would use other people's other hot brands to pair with my not so hot brands to help sell them along. But Diageo, people at Diageo would like freak out sometimes. They're like, "You can't use that. That's from another company." And I'm like, "But we don't have a modifier. We have nothing back here. I think we only had, we didn't even have vermouth." I was like, "There's nothing for me to mix with. I can't make all juice cocktails. I have to actually use other things." So it was having to do a full education for them of like, okay, these are the hot other brands that, I have to use, so pick your choice. But these are the ones I'd like to use. Do you have any problem with that? I'm like, unfortunately, we just don't make anything similar. But knowing that which ones, when I was traveling around the country, distributors, knowing which vermouth they carried. If I was teaching them how to make Manhattans, that was a big, I constantly have to switch that up a lot. And, it's a big one.
absolutely.
Absolutely. Is there anything else people do that piss them off?
Yes. We could stay here all day with that.
One more. What's a good one? Like anyone go in that somebody you see all the time. You're like, oh, stupid idiot.
Don't call a sales rep between 4:15 and 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
They're putting in their orders. You're a terrible human. They're literally hunkered down somewhere with all their orders for the day, going like this to try to get their order in for the next day. Don't call them like, "Hey, got a really cool opportunity." Like, no, just don't do that. It's that I think is something that people really don't understand. And don't get banged up at their accounts.
Yeah.
And don't lie. Don't say something and not come through with it. That's for anything though. Like the biggest thing is be true to your word. And if you're uncomfortable saying no, don't feel so uncomfortable saying no that you're forced to say yes. If it's no, it's no. You can move on. You can find another account, Don't say yes when you can't say yes and find yourself in a really awkward situation with the rep, with the buyer, with their FSM, with their possible director, with your boss, because the industry is very small and it will get out that you are doing something stupid. So.
Yeah, no, that's great words of advice. Yeah, don't overpromise. So many people do that. That's one of the biggest mistakes I think new brand ambassadors make, because they're so eager to please and get new placements that they start over promising. And you do feel that pressure in the account. You're like, "Oh my God, I want to land this account, so I'm going to tell them this thing." And it's like, then you learn, you're like, "Oh, there's so many more accounts. I don't have to do businesses in the account. I know it's an important account, but like they're pressuring me to do things that are not legal. So unfortunately, I have to walk away and let somebody else get the fine."
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Zach, for yourself, like you have some best practices when you're working with your sales team. Like, how do you help them achieve their goals and maybe at the same time get your own goals achieved in the accounts?
Yeah, I think I just have to echo what Tommy said. I think it's all comes down to consideration. We all want everyone to be considerate of our time and our schedules. And I think it's only fair that you treat everybody with the same amount of respect. And I love that Tommy said, the first thing you absolutely want to avoid is the mentality that they work for us or we work for them. We are a team. We work together. And sometimes you are exactly the person the sales rep wants to talk to, and then sometimes you are absolutely not the person that they want to speak to. And just having just being considerate of that. And with regards to specific work with, I think you can find out pretty quick from working with a sales rep how they like to operate, and everybody's a little bit different. Some of the reps love to learn all the information and all the background and then just say it and have you there as a support kind of mechanism to be able to talk about the brand in case they miss something. And then there are other ones that say, "All right, here's the person on your market set, go. And that's just something that you have to be flexible with and you have to adjust to, is everybody works a little bit different. But at the end of the day, everybody's trying to move the same product. So having that in mind, knowing that everybody wants to be successful, but you also have to be considerate of, when you visit an account with the rep, sometimes the rep has to have a conversation with the account about something that isn't your product.
Yeah.
Sometimes they have to have a conversation about something else that's on their goals that isn't a part of our portfolio. And you have to be flexible and you have to be cool with it, because again, at the end of the day, this is their account visit for the day and they have to get in all the work that they have to get done, not just the stuff that we're focusing on. So I think it all comes back to, you have to be flexible and you have to be considerate. You have to work to drive your brands forward and put them in front of mind. But sometimes you have to be a little patient. Sometimes you have to let the sales rep work.
No, absolutely. And I'll add to that in one way. It's like, one of the things I used to find is sometimes I would help them sell that other product. They would be like, they would have another brand. It wasn't my competing brand, maybe it was a vodka or something that I had, wasn't part of my portfolio. And they were like, do you have a cocktail for this? I'm like, absolutely. And I would bang out a cocktail to put it on the menu. I was like, you need, they're like, I really need this on the menu. I'm like, let's make it happen. And I would create cocktails for them, for other brands, or help them. Like, I know a few things about that brand. They're like, you do? I'm like, sure. I was like, I can say, I can talk to them about it. I can let them know how they can work with it and what they can utilize. I mean, if I can pair it with one of the things that I'm trying to sell, even better. But sometimes it just wasn't. It was like, and then the brand, they were more excited to work with me because I was trying to help them achieve their goal, right? Because I was being a team player.
Part of the team.
Part of the team. It's not about it's mostly about them. Okay, so Zach, as a person, you ran a beverage program right behind the bar. Mm-hmm. And so you have a really deep understanding of like the breakdown of what things cost and how to cost them out, so that you're making profitability on every single bottle and on your cocktails. And you said to me yesterday, this is one of your kind of tactics to help convince people to take in your brand by showing them how much money they can make off of it. So can you break it down, like how you do that?
Well, sure. Everybody's in this to, we're in it because we love it, but we're also in it to pay rent. And I think that's definitely something that you always have to take into consideration when you're talking about the price of bottles and where things are going. And having the conversation with a buyer, when I was a buyer, there's two different sides. There's the bottles that I know are going to live on the wall for a while, and eventually the money will come in, and eventually we'll sell the bottle. Eventually all the product moves through. Just sometimes things take a little bit longer than others. And we bumped into this a lot with the Macallan, because we have bottles that we're talking about that are several thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars, and that's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of companies and a lot of buyers. There are definitely both on and off premise who just don't even blink at it and they'll just buy the bottle, no problem. But there's also the conversation about figuring out the cost and figuring out what the expectations of the bar or the restaurant or the retailer wants and what their kind of cost is. And I think often when you have a good relationship with somebody, you're able to figure out how many points they want, how much profitability they want to have for each one. And I think what it comes down to is you have to kind of know in the top of your head what the cost per ounce of all of your product is, especially for the on-premise. If you have an idea about what the cost per ounce is, you can have a much more direct, clear conversation. And a really great piece of advice that I got was, don't be afraid to pull out the calculator and have it there for everybody to see. This is how much the bottle costs, and this divided by 25, we'll say, is for your 750, and this is what your relative cost per ounce is. And if you're charging this and you're including these things, and this is the type of cocktail you're making, and having an understanding of this is how much lime juice costs, this is how much simple serve costs, this is how much, maybe you have a general idea of how much it costs for your team. So then you can really come down to, you can sit there and in a few minutes have a really great understanding of, this is exactly how much, if you wanted to stick this into a cocktail, this is exactly how much it's going to cost. Yep. And then because we know how much it's going to cost, this is what you're going to charge. And look, when you finish this bottle, look at the revenue you've brought in. And again, sometimes with the bigger bottles, it takes a little bit of time, but I can't tell you how many times I get a call from the Four Seasons and they'd be like, we've got these guys here and they're killing the bottle of Macallan M, right, which was, man, I can't even remember. I think it was like $1,200 an ounce, and they're killing the bottle, right? Yeah. So that's the conversation. That's the conversation that is important there, and it's always, again, about volume, but also the revenue that comes behind it. I think having that information and that just being able to address it and not being scared to talk about cost is a great step in talking to somebody, especially when you're trying to develop cocktails for a menu.
No, I think it's a great point. And also, I used to say obviously it has to be at the right account when you're doing the 12, the really expensive bottles. But even sometimes, the mid-tier accounts, it's like you need a couple of these really expensive bottles that people call for, because there's always that douchebag with the black card that's going to want to press his friends and buy the bottle, as you said, and crush it. And
I love that guy.
I love that guy.
I love that guy.
Are they? I love that person. It's like it's fantastic.
Depletions.
All the depletions, but the greatest margin that most places will make their money is through the booze, and so they always want to have a lower cost than usually their food or their labor, and having the basic understanding of that helps you so much more in progressing forward with a relationship and getting the placement.
1,000%, because a lot of people hear about the raven that is holding the rosemary in their mouth that's slightly flavoring the seasoning that's going to go into the spirit, but not many people hear about liquor cost. So that's a nice weapon to have a nice bolt to have in your gun.
Because I think sometimes on some buyers, that's all they care about.
1,000%.
They don't care about the rosemary that was sprinkled by the crow that was 100 years old. They're whatever. Tell that somebody else. How much money am I going to make off this product? Why should I have it? And what are you going to do for me?
Exactly.
That's the first thing that they're thinking about when they ask the prices. How much am I going to make off of this? So there's a direct correlation there for sure.
No, absolutely. I don't know if this is. For me, I used to be like, well, this is what I see what your prices are now, and also I know a similar place that they're charging this for this, and this is how much they're going through it. At this price, this is the price they're making and making this type of profitability. So they know it's this is what because a lot of people would ask me well, what are other people charging for it per ounce? Having that in the back of your head of what that cost was, and I'm like, this is what they charge. It does very well, and so they're going through a bottle a week, and they're making some good money off of that.
Definitely,
which is a big thing. All right, so. I want to talk a little bit because we're getting on our, we're at 110, but we're going to get into the last couple of questions here. All right. So, but Zach, because you brought this up, and Tommy, I don't know if you have any thoughts about this, is that, sitting at the bar and being able to train a bartender about your product is kind of a skill set, because you have to be able to do it in a tactful way that you're not coming across as a salesperson. That you can kind of make it part of the conversation and kind of drop little nuggets. But Zach, I love that you brought up something about you would ask a question to them first.
So one piece of advice I would give, especially if you're going into new accounts, is if you can, if the budget allows, try to bring somebody with you. Try to bring somebody from your team or a sales rep or something, because bartenders are there for the hospitality, and they feel like they're going to have to talk to you if you're sitting there by yourself. And so allowing for the freedom for them to approach you and not feel like they have to always be entertaining you because you have somebody with you allows for a much more casual conversation to take place. And often what I would order is I would come in and say, hey, I'm looking for a single malt sherried whiskey, let's say Speyside. And I would want to see what the bartender pours, right? I would want to see, what do they recommend? What do they bring over? What do they talk about? And some places they would absolutely, I was there doing a staff training, and they would remember, and they'd come over exactly what I'm looking for. But often, you would find that somebody would come over with a different brand, and then this is a really great opportunity then for you to say, okay, well, this is great. This is what I asked for. But also, let's now talk a little bit about other ones that you might have on your wall that also fit in that realm. For example, the Glenrothes. Let's talk about the sharing. Let's talk about the similarities there. And what you're doing in that realm is you're just giving the bartender more weapons for when somebody asks the next question. Somebody comes and says, I love sherried single malt. What do you got? And they can then say they have the ones that they immediately go to, but now they know that they have a little extra weapons and extra things on the list. So having that interaction kind of catches them off guard a little bit, but it also just allows for kind of an honest conversation about, I was actually hoping for something more like the Glenrothes, and here's why, and here's the reasons. And it's a whole category. Sherried, especially with single malt, sherried single malt is a massive category. And so there's so many options. And so being able to educate someone on the similarities and the differences between each brand is incredibly important. Important.
I think that's such a great tactic. I never thought about doing asking them what would they recommend, and then seeing what the reaction was, and finding out. Sometimes it is curious why. I have done it with tequila once. I remember the bartender said, I was sitting at the bar. I was actually at a W Hotel or Royalton in Midtown, and I was there. I was doing something with Don Julio, and three guys came up, and they were like, "Yeah, like they wanted Patron," and they were like, "Patron," and they wanted, but it was like the top one of the, the really expensive Patrons that just escaped from my brain. And I looked at the guy and I said, the guy just bought the drink, and it wasn't the bartender. He was like, "Yeah, yeah, I highly recommend that," like blah blah blah. And then I said, "How about 1942?" And he's like, "Oh my god, I love 1942." And I'm like, "So why didn't you recommend it?" And and they were both, and then I asked the guy, like, "Why didn't you ask for it?" Because the guy's like, "Oh my god, I have bottles of it at my house. I love it. It's my favorite tequila." And sometimes it's just Patron is just in their head. Like sometimes brands just get stuck in their head. Macallan's one of those brands that people just go, they don't know anything. It is like Macallan. These ask,
Right.
two Macallans and one Patron, and like they kind of like, like they just have.
You met my cousins?
Yeah. Two Macallans. Two guys sitting at the No Man one time, and I don't even think they knew it was Scotch. They just know it's Macallan.
Well, that's interesting you say that too, because I would always encourage, especially when we're working in single malts, to order cocktails. I always encourage cocktails because that's an education in itself. There's a lot of spirits out there that are kind of perceived as maybe a little too precious to be able to be enjoyed other than neat or maybe with a little bit of ice. And so ordering something in the cocktail, especially if you work for the brand, automatically gives somebody permission, because I promise you, the people who are making the spirits want you to enjoy it however you want to enjoy it. Yes, I say you should always experience something neat first if you've never had it before, because that's the initial product. But after that, enjoy it the way that you want. And so being able to order a single malt old fashioned or a shaken daiquiri style cocktail or anything in between allows for the bartender to then go, "Oh, this is actually something that we can utilize more often and recommend more often in more facets."
Yeah.
And so then they're kind of educating themselves on their own, which is great.
No, absolutely. And yeah, and I think just doing that education at a bar, gives them other, as you said, like opens their eyes, like, oh, I don't just have to go to Macallan, like, Macallan's part of your portfolio, but I also, the Glenrothes is like, like I have this other brand and it's also a sherry brand, and you're giving them weapons for themselves, not weapons, but you're allowing them to become advocates and to be more knowledgeable, so they have more things that they can recommend, and they are more entertaining, or they can entertain their guests a lot more and give more recommendations. Tommy,
Definitely.
you're about to say something, or you're just sitting up?
Oh no, I was just sitting up. Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. All right, so let's talk about this. So you both went from working on Macallan, right, which we talked about, and you still work from Macallan. Obviously, it's part of the portfolio, to working on Glenrothes and Wyoming whiskey, which are not as well known. Both great whiskeys, but not as. So, what are some challenges? Like, we talked about this a little bit. Like Zach had the gold dust of Macallan on him, when he walks into accounts. But like, I'm assuming there's a challenge. I'm assuming you don't automatically switch. An account's not like, "Oh, you're the Macallan guy, I'm automatically going to bring in Glenrothes." So talk, Zach, when you say, like, what are your challenges? And Tommy, what are your challenges? What do you see, even with the sales reps? There's probably some challenges of them selling it in.
Well, yeah, I think that there's the combination of dealing with known brands versus unknown brands. Building up smaller brands to compete is a really exciting adventure and journey, but there are challenges behind it, because known brands have something that comes with them, which is people know it and people buy it. Right. And so there has to be that conversation about why Glenrothes and Wyoming fit within the market and fit within the realm. And I think both of them do fit a hole in, on the wall that needs to be filled. And what it comes down to is convincing someone that they're interested in actually filling that hole the right way. But it's definitely a challenge, especially coming out of the quarantine and people are still trying to figure out how to find a bar back and how to staff the house appropriately and move through products that I had an account who still had a ton of product from 18 months ago that they hadn't moved through. So it's a really interesting time to be building a brand right now, and there's a lot of things there. But when you're working with brands that are strong brands, that is great product and great liquid, it's just about finding the right place and the right home for it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Tommy, how do you get the sales reps, excited about it?
It's offering them a way to make money. It's right now, if you're going to be out in market and touching their accounts and trying to do these activations, it's another way that they can make money. So it's not one of these dead brands. It's not a do me a favor brand. It's a brand that has legs. And our approach to market right now is to activate in the on-premise and get these places back up and running. We're not. Thank you, Gary, my guy, especially sausage and garlic pizza, my man. But sorry, inside joke. But we have to give back to people right now. And so when we're approaching market and building these brands, we're building it in a partnership-based way, right? I'm not going to come to you and tell you to build this brand and bring nothing on my side for it. It has to be a relationship, and I have to be doing something for you while you're doing something for me. You know, I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but it's definitely not easy, and especially e-commerce is an animal. So the brands that got strong throughout the pandemic were the brands that were already strong.
Yeah.
You weren't able to go into a bar and discover that new spirit. You weren't able to walk into your local liquor store and have a tasting and have the person working the counter recommend something to you based on what you like. You went to what you already like because you were ordering off of Drizzly or e-commerce.
Mm-hmm.
And now with everyone trying to trim down their inventory and be super focused, and like Zach is saying, the pandemic came right off of the buy-in for tariffs for single malt scotch.
Yeah.
So everyone knew when the prices were going to be raised, so they over-ordered.
Yeah.
And they didn't have a chance to deplete that going right into the pandemic. So they're still sitting on their tariff buy-ins. Also, like Zach said, people can't find good help right now. Hence why RTDs are crushing life. You know, like and we're not going to put Glenrothes into a can. So it's difficult. So this is your time to be creative. This is your time to offer something back to your accounts other than just, you can't be spending recklessly either because every brand's budget is wild right now. Mm-hmm. You know, you have to be very intelligent with what you're doing, and you have to get the most impact as physically possible. Edrington is an amazing company. We're a very small company at the end of the day with very big brands. And what we're coming to market with is not the same as what other brands that were in the similar conversation with are coming to market. I can't do a blowout party for Bar Conv in Brooklyn. I would love to, you know, but then I can't go and help out my on-premise and off-premise buddies throughout the year. I have to be very selective. We're a very small brand inside of a very big company with some big brands. So it's having that entrepreneurship approach and having that love for not only your brand but for the industry. Like I'm an industry rat. I started when I was 15 years old at Sirico's Caterers. You know, like I love this business. I love hospitality. So that's a big thing. So I want to give back to the people that are still there. Salute. God bless you for still being here after the toughest year ever. You know, like I was in the city during 9/11. I saw the city come back. Like that's an amazing triumph, but it's nothing compared to what COVID was. And this is where you have a much longer road. So it's finding a way to be intelligent, be disciplined, and stay on brand and do the best for your accounts as well as your brand.
No, I think those are great words. Great words.
That's it.
Nice. No, it is. I think you do have to be intelligent on how you're spending money. And is it a lot of just sitting and listening? Like, let me just sit down with my account and, dude, what can I do for you? Like, how can I be of service? You know, somebody gave me a suggestion to, like, I think, you know, wouldn't it be fun, brand ambassadors all volunteer to bartend a couple of shifts for them, like to help out or wait staff. I'll have like wait staff day where everybody kind of like picks a day, like Mondays, all the brand ambassadors, or Tuesday, whatever day. And you intermittently, it's like a couple times a month. I'm gonna bartend or bar back or be a waiter at a couple of my favorite accounts, like just to help them out. I don't know if that would be helpful because you'd have to learn their systems and stuff, but I don't know.
That's intelligent. I know a lot of brands though make you sign that non-compete. Zach and I have it, so we couldn't go behind a bar. But that's definitely a good idea. If we could give Cocktails to Go a chance during COVID, I'm sure that brands would okay their help going out there and helping out the industry and getting behind the stick every now and then. That's actually a great idea.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Can you be a waiter?
Yeah,
you could be a waiter, right? You could be a waiter or a hostess or something just to kind of help out.
It's also about just going and visiting and being patient and just being supportive and being in the bar and being in the restaurant and being in the store, because when people see that the place is busy, they're going to come in. And as Tommy said, everything's going to come back, and we will eventually hit a realm of normality again someday. And I think there's just some patience that has to happen for everybody's perspective. And Elaine, you're absolutely right. Sometimes you just have to sit down and listen and hear what's going on, and what can I do? How can I help?
How can I help? All right, so we're going to wrap this up. We're going to talk about, I always like to wrap it up because we've all had some hard lessons that we've learned on the job. I mean, I always have a joke that there's a policy still in place at Diageo because of something I did on the job. And there are brand ambassadors that still have to abide by it till this day. So, you know, there are definitely hard lessons. You just learn them and you go on. Obviously, you hopefully learn from them. You don't make them again. So if there were any one or two hard lessons that you kind of learned that you would like to share to help other people not make that same mistake of, like, you know, Tommy, I'll start with you.
I made a lot of mistakes. It's hard, but I would say every account that I've over-invested time and money to that has been that difficult account, I would say 8 times out of 10 didn't come through.
Yep.
And the majority of them ran into business.
Mm-hmm.
It's a relationship. It shouldn't be difficult. So when you're calling on an account, don't allow them to bully you around. You know, if it's on your run and it's a difficult account, let your direct report know this is a difficult account. And it's not going to work there. It's not because of lack of effort. It's not because of me being lazy. It's because they want too much, and I'm not going to bend. And I'm not going to jeopardize my career, my future, or my expense account, you know, for this. So be very intelligent in who you're doing business with. And it should not be expensive or difficult. You will find the right accounts with patience and with discipline. You don't have to go and hit, and Zach has heard this for 2 months now. You don't got to hit a home run every day. Base hit is just fine. Right. And as you start hitting more and more base hits, they all start accumulating, and now you're off to the races and you're running. And the home run's going to come naturally because you found your swing, and it's going to be at the right time when you need the home run, as opposed to swinging for the fences every time. So just be ambitious, get out there and do your thing, but be patient and don't get bullied around. This could be a very mean business, especially to young BAs and young reps. Like, there are sharks out there that want to get you. Shark Week. Sorry, I had to throw a shark in there. But don't fall victim to the evil of this business.
No, I think those are such great words of advice. I think we've all done that. Like, you know, it's a hot account. You want to be in there. You want to do, you know, you want your brands on there, and they're asking for ridiculous amounts of things to only see if you actually do give in. And then a month later, somebody else comes with more money, and you're just done. They don't stick to their word. They're like, yeah, I did what I said. I put you on the menu, whatever. But they came in, they outspent you, and now you're gone. But yeah, there's always another account. Zach?
So I have to go back to my take care of yourself, because every new person to a brand team. Well, first of all, you know, this isn't the life for everybody. Not everybody can be a bartender, and not everybody can be a beverage director, and not everybody can be a brand ambassador or a market manager or an area manager. There's a specific set of personality and skills that require you to be able to do it. But something that I've found over the course of the 4 years has been, you know, find a mentor, find somebody who you can talk to internally and externally. Have some people who you can ask the kind of questions that you can't really go to your boss about. Of, you know, listen, I'm really exhausted today. How do I manage this? I have 3 events that I have to go to tonight. How do I manage this? And I think having a mentor, especially in an industry where we kind of run the gamut on levels of experience, it's, you know, there's a lot of lessons to be learned out there, and everybody does the job a little bit differently. And having that perspective and having a mentor internally, so somebody that can say, you know, I've been with this company for a decade, and here's the perspective on, nope, this is where you need to set your priorities, and this is where you need to go, from somebody that you don't report to, right? Just because there's a different dynamic there. And then the external thing is, you know, what should I be prioritizing? Should I be really excited about this, or should I be really excited about these other things? And being just, is the way I feel about this thing normal, right? Is it okay that there's maybe one of the SKUs in my brand isn't my favorite, and there's other ones that I love and I adore, but is it okay that, there's this one whiskey that I go, oh, it's just not for me and my taste. Is that okay? And having those conversations and just giving yourself permission to ask those questions helps with your just emotional stability and your mental health. You have to take care of yourself. Like I said at the beginning, if you're not taking care of yourself, you are no good to your team.
No, I think great points. I was gonna say, also because being a brand ambassador could be a very lonely job.
Yeah,
indeed. Especially when you're a road warrior. I was pretty much national at Bayou, and it can get very lonely out there. And speaking of mentors, thank you, Brent Lamberti and Megan Sacher, for teaching me how to be a brand ambassador and how to do all the stuff that I just said over the last hour. So Brent was definitely one of my mentors. I was his Padawan, and he taught me a lot of stuff. I have a lot of people that I look up to in the industry, a lot of people that have helped me along my way. Chris being number one and getting me in at Empire and then taking me to Edrington, but also guys like Matt Slozik, who I could always pound stuff off of. So it's always huge to have those. So Matt's one of my big brothers as well, which is great to go out and reach out and say, how would you handle this?
Yeah. No, it's really important to have those people you can ask, because it can be quite stressful and you feel like you're all alone. You have to make this big decision, and to be able to have somebody else bounce the idea off, somebody else on your team that isn't your boss. Because it is nerve-wracking. You don't want to admit to your boss sometimes that you might not know something. So having somebody else put that perspective, that's great words of advice. And I was going to say, I will tell you words of advice. If there's a brand that you don't really like as much as other ones, Daniel Jones from Angostura Rum said this. He said, just find something about the brand that you like. And that's the only thing you talk about, whatever it is. You love the fact that it's barrel aged. You might not like the flavor profile. You might just find the thing you do like, and you just talk about that. There's always something.
The advice I got was this is not for me, but this is what I love about it. Right. There was, and it was because it was, and from my personal experience, there were 3 different parts of a range, and 2 of the parts I was very excited about because it's exactly my palate. And then the other part of the range just wasn't for me, but it's still an incredibly popular part of the brand. And I said, so I called Nickel or Risk and I said, what do I do? Tell me what to do. And she said, well, some of these things, you're excited about the brand, which is always fabulous, but some of these things just aren't for me. And that's totally okay. It's
not my taste profile. Tommy,
right.
What were you going to say?
I'm terrible at that. I can't lie. I am so bad at that. And if there's something that I don't like, and that's what you have to like, the brands that you're representing. You really do. And I can't do it. And I was at Proximo before Edrington, and there were certain brands that I just didn't believe in. And I was like, $17.99.
Yeah. You're like, that's what No, right. I'm extremely transparent. Like Diageo a few times tried to get me to work on some of their brands that they came out. I was like, you don't want me working on that, because you'll see it on my face all day. Like I'd be like this. You want this? The bottle, shaking my head to the person.
And that's why I was a terrible I wasn't a terrible sales rep, but I wasn't a good sales rep, because I'd be like, I know you don't need this, but
I want to talk to you about it. Well, I have learned, I do agree though, exactly, because I work with Campari rum, and Campari has a barrel rested rum and a white rum, and I love the white rum. And I don't particularly like the barrel rested, but when I introduced to people, what I started seeing on my end, and Julian Reiner and I agree with this, was that she'd be like, but there are a lot of people who do like the barrel rested. Like I'll introduce the fire and they don't like the white. So I learned to just find, I was like, and this is the barrel rested, and this is what it is. And I would just leave my opinion out, because I started realizing some buyers were like, no, I like that one better. I'm like, okay. And I was like, I had to learn just keep myself here's all the aspects of it. I wouldn't give my opinion about it. I was just like, this is what it is. And they'd be like, I really like that. And they didn't like the white, and which is fantastic rum. I'm like, how do you not like that? It's perfect. It's so fucking good.
Well, I often say to people, we spend our entire lives developing our palate to decide one very important thing. Do I like this or do I not?
Yeah.
And the way that everybody experiences things is different. And so, and I truly believe that every opinion is correct when someone is tasting something. If they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. And that's okay. And that's totally okay.
That's okay. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. It was really great getting to know you guys a little bit better. You guys gave some really great insights. I think people are going to learn a lot from this conversation. So I look forward to seeing you both in person at some
Same.
point.
Definitely.
To get a Glenrothes. I've never had it, so I don't think I've had. I know what it is. I've seen it, but I don't know if I've actually drank it. And a Wyoming. I don't think I've either had that one either. So
we have to make that happen then.
Challenge accepted.
I'll make you a Cali daiquiri. You can taste me on your whiskey. But this was fantastic. So yeah, let me know when you're in around. And until then, both of you guys have a great rest of your day.
Cheers. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Keep it up. These things are great. Keep them going.
And thank you so much for having us be a part of it. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Definitely.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.